and welcome back to Those Two Geeks. My name's Alex. I am riding solo today, and because I'm riding solo and I don't really have a huge amount to talk about, because I know Joe and I wanted to cover the newest Superman movie together, and I'm not going to rehash my thoughts in two episodes back to back. I instead wanted to continue on from one of the last times I was riding solo. I think it was episode 318, so 3 or 4 weeks ago, where I spoke about the early days of comics. And if episode 318 was about the birth of comics, this is the story about how they grew up, how two rival publishers changed the medium, how the 1960s reshaped superheroes, and how comics finally started talking back to the world around them. I don't know if this is going to be a new sub-series of those two geeks that I will delve into every time I am alone. I don't know if it's something that we will end up spinning out. Um, I'm not sure. See how it goes. See how the feedback is. It's, I think, tentatively titled Ink and Imagination. We'll find out. We'll see how that goes. In the meantime, though, buckle up because we're about to get cosmic. After the crash that I had spoken about briefly last episode, by the mid 1950s, the comic industry was on life support. The Comics Code Authority had gutted the horror and crime genres. Superhero sales had plummeted. Many publishers folded, and the ones that remained, they played it safe. Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman were still around, sure, but they'd become more fantasy than action. Lots of aliens, time travel, robot dogs. The grit was gone. Comics were sanitized and a little boring. But then came a flicker of innovation, and it started with a reboot. One has to wonder if in the mid 1950s we notice how successful the reboot was. Is that one of the reasons why we're constantly seeing them almost 60, 70 years later? However, in 1956, DC Comics, then known as National, took a gamble. They rebooted a forgotten hero from the 1940s, The Flash. This wasn't the same old speedster. This Flash was Barry Allen, a forensic scientist struck by lightning. It was not Jay Garrick. So Showcase number 4 hit newsstands and fans loved it. Next came new versions of Green Lantern, Hawkeye, The Atom. These aren't just costume changes. They are complete clean slates, rooted in science fiction and 1950s futurism. What's commonly known now as the Silver Age had begun. Well, DC doubled down on superheroes. In 1960, they launched the Justice League of America, a super team featuring Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and more. It was a hit. Over at Timely Comics, which had become Atlas Comics and will eventually become known as Marvel, publisher Martin Goodman noticed. He asked his editor, a man named Stan Lee that I'm sure you've heard of, to create a superhero team to compete. Stan, by this point, was in his 40s. He'd been in comics for decades, mostly writing safe, formulaic stories, westerns, romance. He was this close to quitting the industry. But his wife gave him arguably one of the most important pieces of advice in comics history. If you're gonna quit anyway, why not write the one the way you want to write it? If you're gonna quit anyway, why not write one the way you want to write it? And the result? The Fantastic Four, debuting in 1961. Four astronauts bombarded by cosmic rays, mutated, flawed, and, for the first time, relatable. They bickered, they had anxieties, they lived in New York. They felt real. Stan Lee Working closely with artists like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, pioneered what came to be known as the Marvel Method. What is the Marvel Method if you didn't know? Stan would write a very loose plot. The artist would draw the whole issue. Stan would go back and write the dialogue. A key example of how much the artists contributed to the writing of a story was Fantastic Four number 49.
I lied. It was Fantastic Four 48 and 49.
With Fantastic Four 48, Stanley had given Jack Kirby the story idea of have them fight God. From that from that 4 word idea came what would eventually be known as the Galactus, or the introduction of Galactus. Jack Kirby drew, created, and told the story of this cosmic being attacking the Earth. He did it without any direction and had a wonderful story that is still referenced and brought up 50, 60 years later. I can't do math quickly. And he gave the pages back to Stanley, who then added in the dialogue. There are fair questions when it comes to the Marvel method as to who was the true writer. Was it the man who gave a quick idea, have them fight God, or a loose verbal script that the artist would write down, take home, draw, finish the pages, give back to Stan, who would then add the dialogue in after? It's a question that I don't really have an answer for. I think in some cases, yes, absolutely, the artist would have done the bulk of the heavy lifting. And in others, Stan undoubtedly had some great ideas that he would work with the artist on. Which ideas? Tough to say. It was a fast, fluid, and chaotic method, but it did work. What followed was a tidal wave of classics: Spider Man in 1962, The Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, The X Men, Daredevil, Black Panther. Marvel became the hot publisher, not just because of superpowers, but because of personality. The contrast between Marvel and DC became clear quickly. DC heroes were icons, gods on the page. Marvel heroes were people, your next door neighbor, the high school student. Superman was and in many ways remains an ideal. Spider-Man was a struggling teen with acne and rent problems, and one could argue he still works best as a struggling man in New York. He's no longer a teenager, but he's not yet 30, I don't think. Batman lived in Gotham. The Fantastic Four lived on Yancey Street in Manhattan. DC told timeless morality plays. Marvel dealt in anxiety, fear, and guilt. And readers responded. Marvel characters weren't better, they're just more human. And in a decade of social unrest and cultural change, that made all the difference. The 1960s were a powder keg. Civil rights protests, the Vietnam War, the counterculture movement. Comics, once forbidden from showing real world struggle, began to hint at deeper truths. The X Men became a metaphor for civil rights. Spider Man faced loss, grief, and alienation. Black Panther debuted in 1966, the first black superhero in mainstream comics. Meanwhile, DC began to push boundaries too. In 1971, Green Lantern Green Arrow, written by Denny O'Neil and drawn by Neil Adams, tackled race, poverty, drug addiction, and war. One famous panel showed Green Arrow sidekick Speedy using heroin. The comics code balked, but the public, they paid attention. By the early 1970s, the industry had entered what fans now call the Bronze Age, a period where comics balanced fantasy with social realism. Superheroes still punched aliens, but they also struggled with PTSD, identity, and politics. Iron Man battled alcoholism. The X-Men, reimagined by Chris Claremont in the late 1970s, tackled genocide, racism, and oppression. Sales ebbed and flowed. The direct market, also known as comic book shops, began replacing newsstands. New formats like the graphic novels emerged. Comics weren't just for kids anymore, and they never would be again. I want to take a minute to honor the names behind the panels. Stan Lee, we all know, the carnival barker, promoter, and writer of a very catchy dialogue. Jack Kirby, the king of comics, a visual dynamo who co-created almost every major Marvel hero. And Steve Ditko, moody, philosophical, and utterly unique, creator of Spider-Man's look and Doctor Strange's mind-bending visuals. But you've also got Julie Schwartz, Carmine Infantino, Neil Adams, Marie Severin, John Romita, Roy Thomas, and Len Wein. Many worked in obscurity. As we touched on with Bill Finger, few receive fair credit. And yet their fingerprints are on everything from Netflix to the toy aisle to the silver screen. Their voices are the true sound of comics. The Silver Age was more than just a reboot. It was a reinvention. Comics, once campy, became complex. Heroes became human. And the industry opened the door, just a crack, to the real world. Today, the echoes of that age are everywhere. In film, fandom, in every crossover event and shared universe. But it all began with creators who decided to ask, what if superheroes weren't perfect? What if they were just like us? Thanks for joining me for this episode of Those Two Geeks. If you enjoyed the ride, let me know. It may not be a weekly occurrence, this style of show, but maybe if you enjoy it, it will come back. I think next time we'd be looking at the darkening skies of the 1980s when comics got serious, gritty, and revolutionary. But until then, we'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.